the ins and outs of filming and photographing a quinceanera. Today we're going to be talking about the pre-photo shoot. Then we're going to be talking about how we're going to edit and do graphic design work for that particular photo shoot. Now the photo shoot that I'm talking about is every time you walk into a quinceanera party, you'll see that they'll have a framed up display saying, it could say so-and-so's quinceanera or welcome to so-and-so's quinceanera, right? But it's usually a nice photograph that they have displayed at the entrance. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And then we're also going to be talking about how you're going to photograph the quinceanera and do video at the same time, as well as the after editing, right? So the first thing you want to do when you're doing the pre-photo shoot is you want to obviously pick a location or give your client some suggestions on where to do it. Usually they know where to do it, but in this case we chose to do the Palace of Fine Arts, and that's in San Francisco, right? So what I learned to do is get there an hour early, right? An hour early before you're supposed to be there. And I do that because I like to see other photographers, photograph their quinceañeras there too, because there's a lot of people that go there to do photographs, right? So as a photographer, you want to get there early because you can learn a lot from the mistakes that they're making, or the choices that they're making, I should say. You'll know your options of what to do, creative choices. Now, the Palace of Fine Arts, you'll see the photograph that I did right here. Okay, so you saw the photograph, and I chose my specific settings because obviously we're at the Palace of Fine Arts, right? So you don't want to go to the Palace of Fine Arts and not actually shoot the dome, because then no one will be like, well, why'd you go there if you didn't shoot the dome, right? So the dome is in the background, then there's a fountain, and then there's our subject, okay? So the palace is in the background, right? And the fountain is in the background, and then your quinceañera is in the foreground. Now the settings that I chose were f8, and I believe I chose a 1/5 of a second of a shutter speed. And I chose a 1/5 of a second of a shutter speed because we had that geyser shooting out water, right? And I saw sample images of what people have done before, and the water looks really choppy, so I didn't want to have that, right? So I chose to not have a flash, so to compensate not having a flash and having a wide aperture, just to get everything in focus, right? So aperture means you get everything in focus. I chose to have an f8 aperture. So I chose a long shutter speed to compensate, right? So I didn't want to use a flash, because usually when you use a flash, that means you're shooting at a really high shutter speed. And I didn't want that because, again, the geyser was right there. So I wanted to make the geyser look well. So what I did was I slapped on an ND filter, opened up the aperture, low ISO, just so I can underexpose the face while having a high, or should I say low, shutter speed. So this way the geyser would come out smooth, like you just saw. And also too, this is a quinceañera, so it's all about the girl, right? The 15-year-old. So I chose to shoot at a low angle, and I hope you liked my framing choice there. Okay, so next what we're going to talk about is, okay, we took the photo, now how do we edit it? So what I like to do is I like to go to 1001 free fonts. It's on the internet, and you can use those fonts, I believe, for commercial use too. So I chose a royalty theme because that's what they wanted. So I also chose it to have a rose gold graphic design color. And so what you do is on Photoshop, you're supposed to download the font right into Photoshop, and then after that you type the name using the font in Photoshop, and then you open up the 3D thing, and then you gotta, I mean, I can't really explain to you how to use the 3D thing, but you just gotta toy around with it. You know, don't actually wait till you have to do the work. Just jump in it right now after you see this video and just play around with the 3D thing, and then you'll get the hang of it. So right now you want to make the mistakes now. This way later when you actually have the job, you won't be making the mistakes. Okay, and also too, what I forgot to mention is when you're actually at the photo shoot, as you saw, my framing choice was chosen and I kept in mind too that I had to put the font somewhere, so I chose to have the font in the lower left side, and I believe that was a great choice because by doing that I knew that there wasn't anything in the lower left side, so I could actually add the font. Now my personal choice is I don't like to put any kind of fonts in a picture, but if your client, you know, demands it, then I guess you have no choice but to keep that in mind. Okay, and then after you're done editing the photo, you want to make sure it's at higher than 300 ppi, I believe, and that's just so the printer will, like, it won't come out blurry or pixelated when they actually print it. It'll be at a high resolution. Okay, so lastly, once you're done with Lightroom and then once you're done with Photoshop, you have to export the photo and then you have to deliver it to a printer company. Okay, so you don't want to just give it to any printer company. You want to give it to a fine art company that can print it out large. So my image is going to be larger than a 20 by 30, so I choose luster because that's what looks great. Okay, so when you're choosing a frame for your 20 by 30, for example, your 20 by 30 image, you want to pick out a 20 by 30 frame. Okay, so I know it looks a little bit bigger, but you're just focusing on the inner part. Okay, now a lot of people will just be like, well, I want to add matting to it too. Okay, well, if you want to add matting to your frame, then you want to actually have a larger, you know, frame. Now I'm not talking about matting right now, I'm just talking about the pure image. So a custom frame will often cost you around $300 to $200. That's what was price range for mine, and it came out really good. You know, you don't want to go cheap on these things because that's your work, and as you know, if you go cheap on your work, it's gonna say something about you, right? Alright, so now that we got the photo out of the way, now we want to talk about photography on the day of. So what I like to think about quinceañeras is you want to film or photograph the house, the church, the limo, the photo session, and then lastly the venue. Now those are 5 categories that have a whole bunch of different, you know, beats in between them. So for the home, you want to make sure that you get the getting ready right, and then for, let's see, you want to get the father seeing the daughter or the father walking his daughter down, you know, the stairs or the aisle, just like if they're getting married, right? But don't ever say that because then they'll piss off the dad. And then nextly, you want to get the quinceañera, you know, walking out of her home, and then lastly, her either entering the limo or the parents' car. Okay. Now, when you film, you want to film the same thing, the same 4 things, plus you want to get usually an aerial or a ground panning down shot of the house. Next is when you're in the church, you want to get an exterior of the church photo video. Next, you want to get inserts of the church, you know, the aisle, the cathedral, you know, just different inserts of it, photo video, right? And then you want to pay attention to when the quinceañera actually arrives at the shoot. Okay guys, I hope you guys understand more about what you need to get. So there's 3 things as that's 4. There's three things as a photographer and videographer that you need to get. Okay, so always remember, you need the pre-photo shoot quinceañera, you want the actual photography and videography, the day of the quinceanera. And what a lot of people forget to do, but that's nice to have, is usually either at the pre-quinceanera or at the photo session, or usually at the venue. You want to get last words for so-and-so, you know, family members, you know, that get to talk in the end. That's a good way to exit out the video once you're done. And this has been Chris Ramirez again, and if you have any questions about it, feel free to leave a comment and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thank you.